Hi, friends. How are you guys?
Good. You?
Good.
I'm fine as well. I'm so happy to be here with you two to start one more book from this amazing spiritual author, Louise. I'm very happy. We have loads of interesting things to talk about today, as always. Before we start properly, I'm talking about the book. Norah will pray for us. She's bringing us some prayer, and then we're gonna get going.
All right. Let's jump into that vibration, but a vibration in just gentle colors and gentle tones. We're asking Mother, Father, God for your assistance this evening as we're studying this beautiful, amazing book, understanding a lot of the spiritual science and the continued moral growth, and also things that we can extract this evening for us to continue working on the good and sharing the good. With that, we ask that you enlighten our souls, our spirits, and those that are around us that are listening, that they can also learn. All those friends that are joining tonight or watching on demand, there's a special light. And always we send lots and lots of peace to our world this evening. I'm going to say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and power, and the glory, forever and ever. And so be it. With that, we ask permission to begin.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. So, entering the book, this book has a really interesting preface, which is called Rending Veils. This preface was written by our beloved Emmanuel in 1946. As we always say here, it's really important and interesting to place these books in this historical period because then they get even more amazing. He begins saying that death is a millenary question that continues to wound sentiments and torture minds. And this is a huge reality, and we see that every single day. Emmanuel says that in all schools of religion, theology, in representing the guidelines provided by the venerable patriarchs of faith, seeks to control believers' emotional realm by seeing to the immediate interests of the incarnate souls. Another huge reality, and we see this every single day. Emmanuel asks, how can we immediately cast into hell the wretched individual who became entangled in evil simply because he or she did not know any better? And how could a loving and just God do that? We know that he and Norah always brings us Mother, Father, God, he or she, this spiritual power, mighty God, would never do something like that. Emmanuel adds, that does not extinguish friendly cooperation, mutual aid, comforting intercession, or evolutionary service. The vibratory dimensions of the universe are infinite as the worlds that populate the immensity of space. No one dies far and wide. The quest for perfection continues. And then Emmanuel says something really important. He says this in introducing this new endeavor in which Andrea Louise appears rending veils, and let us remember that Allan Kardec, the unforgettable codifier, refers several times in his works to the errant state, in which a countless number of discarnate human creatures are held. This errant states would be the spiritual sphere for those that haven't been had much closer with this term. It should be noted further, however, that going from the material sphere to the errant state does not mean absenting oneself from initiative or responsibility, nor does it mean simply roaming aimlessly around in some kind of airy vortex with no essential directives. And as we've seen, as dematerialized we get, we're going to work more and more and more. And Emmanuel finishes saying that Andrea Luis also says that here or there in the spiritual sphere, humans are the fruit of their own actions, and that divine laws are eternal organizations of justice and order, balance and evolution. Beautiful preface. 1946. Amazing. So we enter the first chapter, which is called An Invitation to the Good. In this chapter, we're going to watch and release tells us about a lecture he attended before starting this new tasks at that place more close to the earth, where he and three other people will accompany the discarnation of five good workers. This is very interesting. So that this is what the book's about. Before the lecture begins, Geronimo, and this is the instructor that we're gonna see loads of times in this book. Um, and he's going to be a very important character. He says this: the lecture to be given by instructor, and the lecture will be given by this man called Albano Metallo. He says that this lecture deserves special consideration. He is a champion at providing aid to the uninformed and suffering spirits living in the circles nearest the earth's surface. A champion. This is very, very pretty. And this is a huge example about the gospel, as we say every time. In the lecture, this man named Albano Mattel recalls the importance of helping brothers who have lost their way. Nobody's happy seeing other people unhappy. He humbly recounts his own experience, and this I don't want to use that much of our time, but I think that we deserve, and it would be very important to transfer here a little part of his lecture, okay? He says this: I got to feel happy in the face of the position that distanced me from such anguish. However, when I boasted more inside myself, packed with the expectation of crossing higher peaks, behold, one night I noticed that the valley, what merciful sun visited the dark den of pain. Angelic beings descended swift from radiant pinnacles, rushing to the lower areas, obeying the power of attraction of the blessed clarity. The Lord Jesus visits today those who err in the darkness of the world, freeing enslaved conscience. Not another word. Nobody could say anything while listening to him. The messenger of the divine plan could not give me more time. It was urgent to descend to collaborate with the master of love, reducing the disasters of moral faults, alleviating sufferings, thinking about wounds, drying tears, alleviating evil, and above all, opening new horizons to science and religion. This is very powerful. In order to undo the multi-million airy night of ignorance. Alone again on the pilgrimage to Otto, I reconsidered the attitude that had made me impatient. In truth, where did my spirit march, unconcerned with the immense human family from which I had drawn my richest acquisitions for immortal life? Why should I be disgusted in front of the valley if Jesus himself, who centered my aspirations, worked solicitously so that the light from above could penetrate the bowels of the earth? Did I not practice the execrable crime of usury, forgetting those among whom I had acquired the script destined for my own rise? How can I go up alone, organizing an exclusive heaven for my soul, sadly abstracted from the values of cooperation that the world lavished on me with generosity and abundance? In this book, we're gonna see Andrea Luis bring us information about an aid mission where Geronimo was the leader. Before the chapter ends, we see Metallo, the man that gave us this lecture, asking Geronimo if they had a specific obligation, to which he replied saying that over the next 30 days, they were to assist five of their dedicated coworkers who were ready to discarnate. They had worked faithfully for the cause of the good, and their superiors had entrusted Geronimo's team to attend to them individually. So this cooperation, helping one another, is what this book is about, and we're gonna see those stories throughout the book. So now I pass the next chapter to our beloved friend Chris.
So let's chapter 2 in the sanctuary of blessing. Andrea starts the chapter saying that Geronimo took them to the sanctuary of blessing, the same area of the help service, in order to receive message from an enlightened instructor. The sanctuary with a huge hall. Andrea described amazing electronic devices at the back of the hall. The administration of the sanctuary never allowed receive more than 20 members at the same time. Because of this rule, only 3 help groups were there. One group of 12, led by Sister Cipronia, would help at shelters for homeless children. Another group, led by Nicanor, would assist in mentally ill spirit at old asylum. And the Andres group, with Geronimo, Father Hipólito, Nurse Luciana, would help a few friends in the process of disincarnating. Cornelio, that institution director, explained to the group that they don't mix groups with different work tasks in order to keep the same mental vibration of the place. The conversation creates the field of the victory. Our brothers and sisters on earth ignore the fact that their words create living images in the mental area, which they are cast, produce the consequence according to their purpose. When we keep the intention of the elevate conversation, the atmosphere of the place and our thoughts always stay elevated. And the desired conversation help to our spiritual edification. In the sanctuary were installed record devices that show the nature of words, emotion, to filter out spirits who are not able to participate in the lighting camera and our prayers. This part is very interesting because nowadays you have similar voice recognition technology present in many digital assistants, so it's very interesting. Another interesting fact that Andre describes when Cornelius, in order to check the time, the visitor message from the field, or he looked the huge clock seemed like big human eyes with two rows of display hours and which today we can understand as a big digital clock. While they wait, Father Hippolyte introduced Andrea to the assistant Barcelos from the team of spirit that assist in the mental will with interesting and new approach of psychiatry. Barcelos explained to André that he has come to some great conclusions. All mental anomalies stem from imbalances of the soul, and the number of the patients in this area is greater than spiritual workers. Mental will are characteristic of the personality that came from past lives. The subconscious represents the emotional acquisitions after the utilizations of many bodies. Barcelo shares with André all the knowledge that he has obtained through the psych healing research, opening the new possibilities to humanize treatments through evangelical love. So this the end of the chapter 2. Let's the chapter 3, the sublime visitor. When the sublime visitor came, Cornelius recommended that everyone pray with the pure thoughts. The instructor stopped in front of a small chamber made of kind of transparent glass chamber, which 2 or 3 people could easily fit inside. Cornelius explained that Father's messenger resist to the vibration shocks of the low planes. They rejected their form that they abandoned a long time ago just because. Here, however, in the sanctuary of Blessed, we need serenity and respect. Such environment provide the emission of pure energy. This part is very interesting. Cornelius invited everyone to project the mental energy into the glass chamber. Cornelius explained that image that would appear will be a symbolic landscape with a calm lake, a robust tree, and he will create the while the group leaders will use the creative energy to form a peaceful lake, and the co-works will create the grass, the leaves of the tree, the vegetation surrounding the serene waters, as well as the sky that must be covered the mental painting. We will offer this scene to the visitor who will talk to us in a few minutes. 2 assistants stay up next to the small chamber at the sound of soft alarm. All start deep concentration, meeting the power of the energies. Andre explained that he felt his mind send images into the crystal chamber. The soft alarm sounded, stopped the process. Everyone was contemplating the beautiful image inside the crystal chamber. Cornell explained that it is still incomplete, lacking many details so that they can try harder to complete that beautiful image. Andrea prayed, asking Jesus to teach him to complete the task. When the soft alarm sounded once again, Andrea was brought to tears. Look at the beautiful picture painted by mind inside that glass chamber. Cornelius' smile displayed a great satisfaction through an magnetic process. The collective thing start to move like as we have and not a picture that had been from their mind began to glow like a small sun appearing in a corner of the sky, reflecting the lake waters in the extraordinary picture. At the moment, someone appeared inside the chamber between the vegetation and the sky. Asclepius, an old man, appeared among the huge ray of light. Andre described Asclepius had a clear voice, which to all the pace of Christians, and then spoke to in a tone that could not be defined in a human language. Try Andre described that if he tried to translate of his words would be incomplete and imperfect. Sister Ciprone, leader of the spiritual aid group to help orphans, was the first to ask Asclepius would have any words of comfort for the work sisters on the earth who were suffering persecution and attacks. Asclepius answered her, mentioned Matthew 5:44. But I say enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who respect you and slander you. The next brother, Raimundo, from the spiritual group to assisting of the mental will, asked Asclepius What should he do with some incarnate brothers who are not carrying out evangelical obligation as they should? Asclepius answered mentioned Paul's first letter to Timothy, chapter 6 to 11. But you, O men of God, flee these things, flee these things and flow after righteousness, godliness, faith, charity, patience, and meekness. Asclepius also gives his synthetic explanation. Who follows the virtues of the Master in our inner sanctuary can help our brothers and sisters without being contaminated. Sister Luciana, who was part of the groups, asked Asclepius if he could provide any guidance to her first time at work as worker on earth. Once again, Asclepius' answer mentions Paul's letter to Thessalonians, chapter 4, 9. But as for fraternal charity, I have no to you, since you God dare not love other. Asclepius also gives us a synthesized explanation. The word teaches us to improve the resources of the good in the most difficult situation. Cornelio also asks Asclepius what can they do to have joy in work at the of the Asclepius also mentions Paul's to nations, chapter 5 to 16. Rejoice always. Asclepius also comment, truth to divine power is the base of the Christian joy that we should never lose. Only the Master Jesus has enough power to chart individual instructions. Soon after Asclepius have waved by and the image fade out inside the chamber, Cornelio explained that Asclepius only comes to our sphere for love to help. Spirit like him coming from the high spirit zones on the earth, live of our north form. But they want the incarnation. The time between the incarnate would be between 5 to 8 centuries to complete. Asclepius also can come integrate the highest spirit zones that habit Saturn and Jupiter. Those can be convoked to our solar system government. Those convoked to join our Milky Way galaxy government that is just a small part of the universe. That's the end of the chapter, but we invite everyone to read the book because it's lots of thoughts inside and lots of information also.
I'm just like holding in the words here. I was reading this today. My students were at school testing. So as they were testing, I'm sitting there reading. And I said, oh my gosh, I need to come back. I'm at work.
Oh my god.
Literally, literally, if you guys read this part, you will be transported to this chamber. There's a lot of, I think, science in between here too. First of all, we talk about 3D printers. I was reading an article that they're already creating these homes out of 3D, the parts, right? They're doing a lot of stuff with 3D printing. And so to me, when, Andre was talking about being in the chambers, well, it's different though because it's like they had the Wi-Fi because they were mentalizing nature and what was coming. I was like, this is a 3D printer with like a divine, I was like, that's the maximum because they don't need the technology. So I was just like, wow. And then that brother, I cannot say his name. I'm gonna try because I should. Asclepios. no, Asclepios, right? He's like a hologram. I don't know, like he came out of nowhere and you could only see. I was like, that's almost like a hologram because he's able to do that. Like he just appeared. I thought that's technology that we have, but not to the advancement that this place has, which I think are like hints. So I'm always fascinated because I think Andre gives us a lot of stuff with the science, and even the chapter before, they talked about that vibrational device to measure the language, and I know um, that they had this app, especially actually for doctors. I did a small research, and you know how words impact, for instance, the healthcare community. So like individuals who are going to go into hospice, sometimes doctors are very scientific, and so they just say it, and studies show that it could make a huge difference when a doctor chooses his or her words wisely. There might even be some form of a vibration, the sound waves, and give people more hope. And so there were some researchers trying to remind, let's use those bedside manners in the healthcare. And to think that there is already a device, like think about how we can improve our language. And even if we don't have, so I was like, okay, if I could talk to Andre, like, what do we have here? How can we input all this? It's by reading. Because if you read, right? Wouldn't you like get more language input in that? Think about the language that's being used now versus people who read a lot and they have that. Anyway, those were my thoughts. I'm so sorry. I had to say them because they were like, I was very impacted by these chapters, especially this one. I want to be in that chamber. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Whew.
A really interesting thing about what you just said. I was reading Joe Dispenza's book as we were talking about him yes, last week, and he brings an example, a true history about a man. He was wrongly diagnosed with cancer, but he did not have cancer, and he died anyway because he did believe that he had cancer. So that's just like you said, the amount of power that those words, when a doctor is about to say that you have or that you don't have something, this can change every single thing. And we're seeing those things in this book. Also, you said about this and a person appearing somewhere else and he or she is not there, and it's really interesting because now we're seeing with Mark Zuckerberg about the metaverse and this is all about that being I do think that in a couple of months or years we're going to be in the same room as three in the same room talking about these books and seeing and watching each other, and maybe even being able to feel like we're touching each other and we're some places else, and it's really interesting because we see that as the worlds get dematerialized, those technology they come, and the gift of ubiquity, it's much more powerful, and we can have that kind of experience. So this book, as we've seen, as we said before, it was written in 1946, and we're seeing everything that this book brings us now applied to our reality in 2022. It's really interesting, amazing.
Chris, anything before I move on? He's like, I already did my talk.
Oh, I read the book like, wow, wow. Every time I say wow,
Oh,
amazing book.
yes, that was beyond. The next one is actually very interesting too, because I read it like one time and I was like, no, you have to kind of go back and read it again because Andre, he's gonna put something in there. He did. And so I was just like, I'm not even sure how we can start, but I think I'm not going to go so much in the order of the chapter. So it's great if anyone really wants to read it to get a feel. It's more like extracting the points because this casa transitoria is very interesting. In English, you could say like transitory house or a transient house. Um, and it was founded by Fabiano de Cristo, and it's actually a mobile refuge, right? So it moves, and they have like a mission statement, which is like we render help to the organization to the best of our ability, right? So first them, and then to our brothers and sisters under our care. They're like an emergency spiritual aid that they have. And so they serve as disincarnates. So this is a place again, on the other sphere, right? Because we're here, and it's really those that need a lot of support, or because as they disincarnate, right? They end up there, and they can be attacked. So okay, so how can I say this? So my notes are not very nice. So so what happens is the brothers or sisters who end up there will get support by the team from Casa Transitoria to overcome those lower vibrational attacks, um, or like ideas, right, to dissuade them from the moral path leading to gradual restoration. Those are literally Andre's words here. So he describes the building because there's a lot of like a futuristic. I would say this is very futuristic, and he went a lot in detail, giving us an idea of how it is in another world. I was just very fascinated. So this particular description says that the building had no like artistic decor. There wasn't fancy, and like in some of the chapters he goes into detail. This one was very minimalist. There was no landscaping outside. It was a very simple, low building. So it wasn't like a tower or anything. And he says that it was usually surrounded by fog, which would make sense. I'm thinking maybe he would put that because we know that a lot of the those that are there, they really do need help. And this chapter is all about energy. Um, and he describes in another area that it has like little small windows. So it's very interesting, and there is a magnetic fence or like barriers around it, which is kind of like composed of energy, almost like electricity. This particular building has many workers and they have equipment, and he describes the equipment that they have. And so here we go. He says that in this place they have like a small device, and that if a person wants to go into the building, they have to activate the device, and then that device will call the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper appears. So again, we keep seeing that technology that João was talking to us, right? So it's very nice. The second thing was these magnetic shields. So it's very interesting. I can imagine there's like no fence, but it's just like you can cross over. um, and they have this device that has like a little warning needle. So when they're feeling incoming energies that are a lot lower, they want to come and distract those that are like in the inside. They have a little device. They go. "Ding, ding, ding, ding." I mean, I can imagine it makes some sort of a beep or something. I don't know. um, and there's a lot of lights. This building has tons of lights. He talked about electrical with force fields, with lights, with searchlights. And there's also a very interesting scenario. But before we can go over the scenario, just so we can see the stuff that he's talking about, he talked about magnetic petards, which are like little bombs. So they're like electricity little bombs. And so, like, the lower energy entities use these electric bombs to try to invade or break down that magnetic shield. And so Casa Transitoria, they have these batteries. He describes them as batteries of percussion rays. And he also mentions another thing, the ethereal disintegrators. So these are some, like, I think before even describing it, it's good to know what he's going to describe, because now we can summarize what actually happened. So he meets sister, what's her name? The names, guys, Zenobia. Very beautiful names. So Sister Zenobia is like the director, and he also comes across Sister Luciana. And it's interesting to note that the organization of the Casa Transitoria, um, they have people who specialize in different areas, so it's not just one person hogging everything. So even their sister Zenobia spiritually was like more elevated or anything, she was very humble. And she was like, no, Sister Soliana is very clairvoyant. And what she did is, Sister Luciana was able to talk to the brothers and sisters that were in there, and she would go one on one, almost like read their mind, and would extract like the ideas. So it was a very powerful connection, and that she had that. And the reason that Andre says this is because Luciana is not a very, she's not the most elevated spirit. And I love that because nobody, like, even if we can take this conversation down to earth, we think about us in the spiritual community or anywhere. We're not expected to be perfect. We all have deficiencies, but that doesn't mean for us to be discouraged. We have gifts. And there's a part that says so many of us have gifts and we don't even use them because, we don't, I always say it's maybe the low self-esteem, or, we don't grow up kind of looking at ourselves as this. I think Luciana being used in this sense in the story that he's sharing with us was very powerful. So she wasn't perfect, but yet she had a specialization. And so when they're talking and all of this, all of a sudden they hear noise, okay, I gotta go back and use my notes. The device with the needle, it makes a little signal. And so somebody, hey, incoming energies, incoming energies. And then everybody's like, oh my gosh, okay, so what are we gonna do? Let's send out that electrical light. So all of a sudden, the lights turn on. So you can imagine outside lights. And it says searchlight. So all the energies are like making noise. And then there's the light. But then that's when the lower energies, they start bombing with these metal or magnetic petards. And then her name, Zenobia says, okay, let's send out these batteries of percussion rays. Okay, so what does this all mean? Like, this is like a war that's not a war. I don't want to use that word because it's not, but it is, but not like it's like a spiritual word. Okay, I know it's a sensitive time to use this word, but that's what's happening, and it's good to note because of the way they're doing it. The Casa Transitoria is using like um, chemicals and chemistry and electricity to fight this back. Because when we think about these batteries, I'm like, why would you do a battery? The batteries, they like store the chemical energy, and on contact they're going to convert that into electrical energy. And so the batteries need a pathway in order for that to work. And I was reading that these flow of electrons, they depend, okay, on like how much how much do you have. So imagine them sending all these batteries and they're activating, they're like making a reaction, and that's how they're able to actually get rid of this other bombs that we're trying to throw at them. And so I read this. Think of as batteries like this. It's a reaction like they either produce or suck up electrons. So it's the strength in an electron tug of war. I said this is what's happening. So as the Casa Transitoria is sending all those batteries with all those electrons and getting all that full, they want to do that to undo the charge that these other guys are trying to do. And it is like I said, these batteries are increasing the voltage, right? So it is surreal when I was thinking it could be, right? It could be very scientific in that sense that they were having this battle, okay, between them, and it was all using electricity, batteries, and all. And then she describes when this happens, these beings start to like scream and make noises and yeah, right, like the light, da, da, da. And then they go, so they're safe. But then they mentioned that after this, this is why they're mobile because once they clean the area, they have these ethereal disintegrators. I was like, do you mean like ethereal, like the word like divine? But I think it's a chemistry, like from diethyl ether, and it's like this or colorless, odorless thing that does that you can create fire. Okay, so you put it and make contact, and it's like It just makes fire, and that fire in this realm cleanse all the residues. So I'm like, this is physics, this is chemistry. I'm sure there's biology in here. So it's a lot. And that's why I really recommend to read, to go back and look at the battle and the way that they're using. It's very advanced, I think. There was no violence, there was nothing. It was really all in that sense. So I was like, this really, really struck me. And once that happened, the house, okay, they're gonna have to move, and it's made of this device, this light substance, and that's what will allow for it to move. So we can make some inferences, right? That this is the purpose of these, this casa. It like goes around, it cleanses the area, has all these chemical reactions, and they keep moving. But what was interesting was that they, when they move, or when this ethereal disintegrators were gonna come, they did react to it. So I wasn't sure why. Maybe you guys know. I couldn't figure out why they would react like that. I don't know if maybe it was something. Maybe we're not supposed to know why, but they were very emotional in the process, and I can imagine just the tug of all this electricity, of this magnetic energy, and just everything. So it was a very interesting chapter, I think. And I'm sorry that I my science is not where it needs to be, but it made sense a little bit, for at least for us to get an idea of how this battle is going. So yeah, and I need
This
to
is
get water.
no, this is very, very interesting. And at the end of the day, the only thing that we can do is bring those descriptions that the book brings us, because a couple of times they're hard to get. So the more honest we are to the book in terms of telling about it, the better. So we can tell people what exactly Andrea Luis is telling us, because I think that that type of technology, we are still going to take like years and years to start to understand. A couple of them, we can see a couple of perils here on Earth already, like we were talking about the metaverse, and we can talk about a couple of holograms that we see here and there, and we can make some connections. But the most part of them we still don't have here on Earth. I think this type of technology, this beautiful things, make me remember when we were reading Memoirs of a Suicide. They describe a television there in which you can feel and smell things. It's totally different, because the television would have that sensor through which we could sense all those smells. And so we are far away, I think, at least I think like that. Actually, I have seen a couple of devices that would be implanted on a couple of food apps through which we could sense the smell of the meals. Really interesting. But when it comes to this chapter that we're talking about today, that Nora beautifully brought us, yes, that type of technology, we are still far away from them. But I think that we can have a notion, a very honest and true notion about what they're trying to bring us. And above all, we need to see those chapters and try to um, take those amazing gospel teachings, because that's why we're here for, to learn. And in this book, we're seeing the law of collaboration very, very, in a very strong way. So above all, I think that's what we need to keep in a firm way. Do you guys want to say something before we finish?
I could say more. Now that I take a breath. Um, I think too, reading this now, bringing it down to us, like it really shows again how these worlds outside of here, they're like, you know, we can use the word ethereal. They're like, they're not solid. And so we see that even though these battles are happening, it was all mental, and it's all these energies. And to think we have so much to discover, and I'm sure there's a lot of science. I have to say quantum physics is probably one. I know Dr. Joe Dispenza would be one that he'll probably know of this study that has to work with it. But it's just very fascinating how Andre can share with us, these things that are happening with science, and now we're like catching up to it and to think the potential that we have. I also love that there was no violence. There was no violence because even after they were able to, kind of shoo away, right? The shoo shoo, right? The lower vibrations, the lower energies. The Zenobia, she was still like, let's like send them good vibrations. That God will help them, and that's love. That is an ultimate uh, love. And now it's just like, okay, like let's send these lights. Think of these like these batteries of this beautiful light hitting on these darkness or these voices, and imagine what you can do sending them love. I was just very, very fascinated by this, and I don't think Andre wanted to tell it to us he wanted us to get it in this language, like really out there. And I have to say that's amazing, because we're ready for it. We're starting to be ready to think outside the box and to be okay with reading about other worlds and what's going on with them, and to appreciate that, so amazing.
I think is really really beautiful is that we don't receive that type of knowledge while we're not supposed to receive them, because God is perfect and everything that he does is perfect. So we're seeing that we're starting to touch in this more figurative way this type of technology, and it's very interesting because we're in this huge transition moment in our planet, and to think about this amount of power that we have in our minds, um, and when we see all those more problems that our uh, so just 1 minute, I think. Okay. Oh, it was Chris. He's here again. Add to stream. Okay. Hi, bro. You're back.
Back to the game.
Yes. So when we see this amount of technology and we see our more problems, as we were talking on Saturday, this so sad war that we're facing on Earth in 2022, when you see that type of more problem, and that when we start to touch that kind of technology, we see that the spiritist principles, they're really really important for us to understand why a couple of brothers and sisters, they are not able to be in this planet anymore, while they can keep on improving their souls and spirits somewhere else that would be, in terms of vibration, more appropriately for them. And it's amazing to start to think that we could like heal ourselves through our minds, that we could be more closer to those that we love with that type of technology device, that we could maybe and Chico Xavier brought for us this information, that when it comes, when we are in this more when we pass there's all those tense moments that we're going through, so we can evolve in a more freely way, when we reach that point, and he told us that we would be able to communicate with discarnate beings, and this is a huge upheaval in terms of the paradigm that still reigns here on earth. And when spirituality becomes the paradigm, all those technologies, they will make much more sense, and this world will be very different, very different. So sorry. We have reached our time here. I'm so sorry. Do you guys want to say something
Oh,
before we
I
before we
just
finish?
I just think that through every case, we're starting to see here what he means by workers of life eternal, because you start to see how every place, all these things that they're just working to help. Like it's a collaboration, and it's just beautiful. We're not even halfway the book, and we can already see, like, yeah, that connection.
Yes, Chris, do you want to say something, bro, before we finish here?
Yes, although all this technology talking, the great was the Asclepius use, so the technology of the love. answer the using the Matthews and Paul's thoughts. That is amazing. This most technology that you have. So isn't all you have to use.
Yes, this is so pretty. And again, when we think about this huge power called love that we have within ourselves, we see that we have to evolve to use them, and that everybody will evolve, everybody will become perfect, everybody one day will see Jesus and then God. This is very pretty. And when they touch those dogmas from other religions. And it's very interesting to see that from science, we're gonna overcome everything that is not the truth. And one day we're gonna see that actually we're spirits, and science will acknowledge that. And then we're gonna overcome everything that is not supposed to fulfill our souls. I'm very happy that we began this amazing book. So we're going to be here next week to keep on going. Thank the Lord, with this book, we're going to have 5 meetings to talk about it. So we're very happy. I have just to say that I'm very grateful for having you guys here with me. Very grateful for our friends that posted a couple of comments here. Everybody that has been here with us so late here in Brazil, and also our friends from the United States of America. Thank you guys so much. See you guys next week. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.